Unsa day ang mga rason nga no dili convinced ang atheist nga naay God or gods? Maayong buntag, today I'm going to talk about some of the reasons why I'm not convinced that a God or gods exist. Magpahibalo lang ko una nga dili tanan atheist pare-pareho og rason nga no atheist sila. Most reasons you will hear from this video are my own reasons ug dili gid maoy rason sa uban. The first reason why atheist ko is na-realize na ako nga fallacious arguments di ay mostly ako mga nadunggan na arguments from faith from the believers. We have many definitions of faith, but for me, faith is believing or having complete trust in something or someone maski walay ebidensya. And to be honest, dili ko comfortable mo gamit aning definition kay I doubt mosugot ang believer nga nituo sila sa Ginoo even though walay ebidensya. I'm pretty sure most believers think they have good evidence of God. Of all the words sa English language, faith is among the most confusing kay na siya ay at least 5 ka definition nga ginagamit nato sa pangadlaw-adlaw. So kung maghiskot kog faith, unya lahi di ay imo gyunahuna nga definition sa faith, then maglibog jud ta. Example, ang akong gigamit na definition sa faith kay firm belief in something for which there is no proof. And ang imong gigamit na definition sa faith kay belief in the reliability, truth, or ability of something or someone. And then let's say for the sake of argument, mao ni imong giingon sa ako. Naman kay faith John, you are using faith baya to decide to ride a plane and to trust nga mulupad ni siya and dili mo crash. Maura na sa faith nato sa Ginoo. Kung wala nato gi-define ang faith before kaniingon ani, then problema jud ni. Kay based sa imo definition sa faith, sakto ka nga naa ako'y faith, musakay man kog eroplano kay I believe in its reliability and ability to fly. Pero based on the definition I used, you're wrong. We can point to actual evidence, like flight logs, license of pilot, that the plane can fly. And proportional ako confidence nga mosakay sa eroplano sa mga evidences nga available. I can continue and list more definitions of faith, pero honestly, there's no need. Ang point is, there are many definitions of the word faith, and people often use them interchangeably. Kung ang word or term na ay more than 2 different meanings and pronta na makabalin-balin between sa mga different definitions of word para ma-achieve ato gusto na conclusion, then high ang chances nga makakommit og logical fallacy nga ang pangalan kay equivocation fallacy. Logical fallacies are errors in reasoning nga makapahimo sa usa ka argument nga invalid. And ang equivocation fallacy is just one of the many logical errors nga ato makomit pag makipaglalista. Here's an example. All feathers are light. What is light cannot be dark. Therefore, all feathers are not dark. Sa first nga statement, we refer light as weight, but color in the second. Therefore, dili nato pwede i-conclude nga all feathers are not dark. Now, sa kaso sa faith or arguments from faith, equivocation fallacy can appear in many assertions pero dili siya nga nakadali ma-spot. Here's an example. Na kay faith sa science, same ra nga naay faith ang uban kay God. Pwede nato ni i-layout like how we lay out the all feathers are not dark argument. John has faith that science works. Rodrigo has faith that God exists. Therefore, both John and Rodrigo have faith. Sa kining example, ang different meanings sa faith may not appear as obvious atong weight versus color nga example, but let me put it this way. John has faith that science works tungod kay consistent ang science sa pag-produce og effective results and that because it's based on evidence nga pwede nato ma-verify. Faith in God, on the other hand, is not based on this extremely thorough process and is not truly independent from individual perception, emotions, or imagination. But if you insist nga Rodrigo's faith in God is the same as John's faith in science, then you must provide such evidence. Because if you can't, then Rodrigo just believes that a God exists without sufficient evidence. I prefer to believe in things nga ato may pakita or ma-demonstrate nga tinuod. Like tinuod jud nga naa kay problema sa imo atay based sa lab results o diagnosis sa doktor. Or tinuod jud nga si Pedro ang nagpatay kang Juan based on the undeniable evidences presented. If you can demonstrate that your God exists, then I'll listen and ako i-base ako conclusion on the evidences presented. But if it can't be demonstrated, you don't get to call it true. You don't get to assume that it is true. My second reason why atheist ko is na-realize na ko nga dili day na ko kailangan i-take ang Bible as true by default. Unsa day dapat ang default position sa any claim? Mutuo nga tinuod until na ay makaprove nga dili tinuod? Or dili mutuo nga tinuod until na ay makaprove nga tinuod? Kung mingon ko nga na ako'y piso sa ako bulsa karon, mutuo ba ka diretso nga na ako'y piso sulod sa ako bulsa and maghuwat ra ka sa proof nga wala, aya ra ka mutuo nga wala? Or dili ba ka mutuo nga na ako'y piso sulod sa ako bulsa and maghuwat ra ka sa proof nga naa, aya ra ka mutuo nga naa? Our default positions may vary and it all boils down to trust. We are more confident in believing that the claim is true if it comes from close friends or family, and are more inclined to be skeptical if the claim comes from a stranger. Another important factor to consider is kung unsa ka ordinary or extraordinary ang claim. And since ang example na claim is naara ko'y piso sulod sa ako bulsa, then people will most likely believe it, even if it comes from a stranger. Depends on how trusting you are. Pero if moingon ko nga na ako'y 1 million pesos sulod sa ako bulsa, then pati siguro friends o relatives na ako dili dayon motuo. Since family member ra ang nag-introduce sa ako sa Bible, and since sa mata og imagination sa bata wala pa naklaro what extraordinary means, then ituo ko na by default tinuod ang Bible, and all the other claims about the Bible are true. When it comes to religion and faith, I've learned to accept nga ang default position is mutuo nga tinuod ang any religious claims. Mutuo nga naay God. Mutuo nga tinuod ang Bible until naay tao makaprove nga dili tinuod. Which is quite impossible to happen in a country that proudly boasts to be the only Christian nation in Asia, with more than 86% of the population being Roman Catholic. Na-learn na ako nga dapat di ay ang default position sa any claim of truth is not true until sufficient evidence proves that it is. Because if everything is true by default, then every holy texts and every claims for God's existence are true, including Kibuloy's claim, as he claims to be the appointed Son of God. I know nga dili tanan butang itrato nato as dili tinuod by default. Pag moingon ako close friend nga naa siya new pet dog, then motuo ko kay naaman tay experience nga ang tao magpet og dogs and wala may rason ako makita ngano mamakak ako friend about having a pet. That doesn't guarantee nga tinuod jud nga naa siya pet dog. But it is highly likely nga naa jud siya new pet based on how excited he was when he revealed to me the news or the fact nga gikan siya sa mall nagpalit og dog treats. Pero kung moingon ako friend nga naa siya diamond nga doorknob sa iyang balay sa langit, then dili ko motuo. Same ra ako dili pagtuo karon kung moingon ka na perfect na book ang Bible, nga tinuod ang Bible. You have to prove to me that it is true. I will not just simply take your word for it maski pagparente or amigo ta ka. As the late Carl Sagan had said, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And finally, ang third reason is simply learning what atheism is and where the burden of proof lies. When I first heard about atheism, abi nako sila ning mga grupo sa tao nga nituo nga walay Ginoo. And in my mind, when you assert or claim something, you have the burden of proof. Sa context sa philosophy or law, the burden of proof is defined as the obligation to prove one's assertion. If you assert something, anything, nasa imo ang burden of proof. Dili ni magmatter kung imo claim is in the positive like na ako'y pet na dragon or in the negative like wala ako'y pet na cat. Since I've made an assertion, obligasyon na ko nga i-prove ni. Atheism is a controversial word, and same as faith, dagan pod siya definition, and I don't get to decide asa sa ila ang valid. But remember, words are just tools of communication, and so what matters is what people are trying to communicate. So again, atheism is not the belief that no gods exist, but is just a lack of belief in the existence of God or gods. Atheists are just not convinced that the theistic claims are true. And me not being convinced does not say anything about whether or not your claim is in fact correct or incorrect. Therefore, atheists don't inherently have the burden of proof. Learning what atheism is learning that atheists don't have the burden of proof. That atheists don't have to prove to theists that a god or gods don't exist because wala man nila gi-assert or gi-claim in the first place. Theists, on the other hand, have the burden of proof, unless they just believe that a god exists but don't assert that a god actually does, which is kind of weird. So here's how we will lay it out. At least na isa ka Ginoo nga ni-exist. Let's put it in a variable called t. Next is walay ni-exist na Ginoo. And this variable is called not t. So we have t and not t. As soon as someone asserts t, nga tinuod na ay at least isa ka Ginoo nga ni-exist, then naa sa ila ang burden of proof. Typically, mao ni ang i-require sa mga atheists that theists should do. Then let's say the theist presents at least one argument. Let's call this argument X. So we have T, not T, and argument X. Logically speaking, the theist claims T is true because of X. So there is at least one God that exists because argument X is valid. Usually mao na ang argument sa theist. From here, the atheist examines X. And then afterward, let's just say his or her conclusion is that X is invalid. So, gitanaw sa, giutingkay sa atheist ang X, and then ingon siya, invalid ang X, or ang argument X. In this example, since ang atheist ni assert nga X is not valid, then naa sa atheist ang burden to prove that X is not valid. Pero wala sa atheist ang burden to prove T is not true or that gods don't exist. To conclude, regardless to how someone defines atheism, if they assert or claim that no god or gods exist, then they do have the burden of proof. So panid ini sa mga ni-claim nga atheist sila and at the same time ni-assert nga walay gods ni exist. Hit the like button if you think tungod ani na video na akay nakatunan na bag-o. Subscribe kung gusto ka maka-receive og ing-ani na mga content sa imo feed in the future. And share this video to your family and friends o i-promote ang healthy nga debate. Daghang salamat sa pagpaminaw og kita ra ta sunod video.